Most people in that place saw him as just another quiet figure passing time. He was the kind of person who blended into the background without trying. When others joked around or raised their voices, he stayed calm. When the room filled with noise, he listened more than he spoke. Nothing about him looked special. That was exactly why no one paid attention to everyone else. What he did looked like simple fun. Something light. Something harmless. Something that did not matter much in the real world. People smiled politely when they noticed him doing it. Some laughed softly. A few shook their heads as if to say, at least he's keeping himself busy. No one thought it was serious. No one thought it deserved respect. He never corrected them. He had learned early that explaining himself only made things worse. When he tried to talk about it before, people nodded, but their eyes drifted away. Their interest faded quickly, like smoke in the air. So he stopped talking and let them believe whatever they wanted. It was easier that way. The place where he spent most of his time was nothing special either. It was familiar, worn down, and full of small distractions. People came and went, carrying their own worries and stories. Some were loud. Some were tired. Some were just waiting for the day to end. In that space, no one expected anything surprising to happen. He fit right in with that expectation. Whenever he practiced, people assumed it was just for fun. Something he did to relax. Something to escape boredom. They didn't notice how focused he became. They didn't see how the rest of the world seemed to fade when he was deep into it. To them, it was just a pastime. To him, it was something much deeper, even if he never said it out loud sometimes. Someone would walk by and make a small comment. Looks easy. Anyone can do that. Must be nice to have so much free time. The words were not meant to hurt, but they still stayed with him. He carried them quietly, like stones in his pocket. He didn't show frustration. He didn't argue. He simply nodded and went back to what he was doing once they moved on. There were days when he wondered if they were right. Maybe it was just fun. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe he was wasting time while others were doing more important things. Those thoughts usually came late when the place was empty and his energy was low. Doubt had a way of speaking loudest when no one else was around. But even on those days, he didn't stop. Something inside him kept pulling him back. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It wasn't about attention or praise. It was about the feeling he got when everything clicked for a brief moment, when his effort turned into something smooth and right. Those moments were rare. They were enough to keep him going. Most people never saw that side of him. They saw him during the casual moments. During breaks, during quiet hours when nothing important seemed to be happening. They never stayed long enough to notice how patient he was with himself. How he repeated the same thing again and again without complaint. How he fixed small mistakes that no one else would have noticed to them. He was just playing around. There were others around him who chased attention. They spoke loudly about their plans. They shared their goals with confidence. People listened to them. People encouraged them. He watched from a distance, not with jealousy, but with curiosity. He wondered what it felt like to be taken seriously without having to prove anything first. Once, someone asked him why he didn't try something more useful. The question was said casually, almost kindly. He smiled and gave a simple answer that ended the conversation quickly. Inside, though, the question echoed longer than it should have. He thought about it that night. What made something useful? Was it money? Recognition? Approval from others? If no one believed in what he was doing, did that mean it had no value? He didn't have clear answers. All he knew was that when he stopped, something felt missing. The days felt longer. His thoughts became restless. Returning to his practice brought a quiet sense of balance back into his life. That feeling mattered to him, even if he couldn't explain why. The truth was, he had started long before anyone noticed him at all. Back when no one was watching, back when failure felt heavy and progress felt slow. He remembered the early days clearly. The awkward starts. The frustration. The moments when he almost gave up because nothing seemed to improve. If people had seen him then, they might have understood, but they didn't. All they saw now was someone who looked comfortable, calm, and relaxed. They mistook control for ease. They confused practice with play. They had no idea how much time had already passed to reach that point. He didn't blame them. People judge what they see in front of them. They rarely think about the hours that came before. They don't imagine the silent effort that happens when no one is paying attention. He understood that, and in a strange way, it made things simpler. He was free from expectations. Still, being underestimated had its weight. There were moments when he felt invisible. Moments when he wondered if anyone would ever look twice. Not because he needed approval, but because he wanted to know if what he was doing truly mattered beyond himself. That question stayed with him, quietly, without demanding an answer. As time passed, people grew used to seeing him there. He became part of the background. Familiar, predictable. No one expected change. No one expected growth. And because of that, no one was prepared for what was slowly building beneath the surface. He continued, day after day, with the same calm expression. The same steady routine, the same quiet focus. On the outside, nothing changed. On the inside, everything was slowly coming together. What others called simple fun was becoming something solid. Something shaped by patience and discipline. Something ready, even if no one realized it yet. And for now, that was enough. He didn't need them to believe. Not yet. Even though it seemed like he was just having fun, the reality was far different. Behind the calm face and quiet presence, he spent hours on his own, pushing himself in ways no one saw. The room was empty. The world outside was noisy and distracted, but inside he found a space where only his focus existed. That space became a place where mistakes were welcome, and repetition was the teacher. He remembered every small misstep. Every error was stored somewhere in his mind, not as a failure, but as a guide. He returned to it again and again, fixing what went wrong, adjusting what felt off, slowly, imperceptibly, building a rhythm that was all his own. Each repetition felt like a small victory, even when no one else could see it. There was a quiet satisfaction in mastering something that no one else thought mattered. People outside thought he was wasting time. They thought his actions were casual, playful, and unnecessary. They could not understand why he continued for hours alone when there were easier ways to spend the day. Yet the more they dismissed it, the more he felt the pull to continue. There was a stubborn part of him, quiet but firm, that refused to stop simply because no one was watching. In that, he found freedom. Late at night, the silence became a partner. The small space filled with his focus, and for a few hours, nothing else existed. There were no distractions, no casual comments, no casual laughter. Only the work and the process. He learned to love the rhythm, the tiny movements, the patterns that gradually formed. It was almost meditative, a state of complete immersion where the world outside faded to nothing. Sometimes exhaustion threatened to take over. His hands hurt, his mind wandered, and doubts crept in. He would pause, take a deep breath, and remind himself why he was there. Not for approval, not for recognition, but for the subtle thrill that came when something clicked perfectly. It was a feeling that few could describe and fewer still could understand. But it was powerful enough to pull him back whenever he wavered. During these long hours, he thought about the people who didn't believe in him. He did not feel anger. He did not feel resentment. There was only a quiet acknowledgement that they were living in their own world, blind to the effort that mattered. That did not make him bitter. It only sharpened his focus. If they could not see it, that was their loss. He had no desire to convince them. The process itself was its own reward. He also thought about those who had casually questioned him in the past. The ones who said, "Why not do something more practical? Or does this really matter?" Even though the words had stung, he had used them as fuel. Each comment became a reminder to continue, to build, to refine. He turned doubt into motivation, shaping it into a quiet, unshakable determination. Sometimes he stumbled. Sometimes his progress seemed painfully slow. He would lose small battles, fail to get something right, or see patterns that didn't work. And yet, he continued, persistence became second nature. He learned to embrace mistakes, seeing them not as defeat, but as the next step in growth. Every error carried a lesson. Every failure built resilience. It was not about instant success. It was about patient evolution. In these silent hours, he also discovered a strange kind of confidence. Not the kind that needed applause, but a quiet certainty in his own ability. He began to trust himself, to believe in the rhythm he was building, even when no one else did. There was strength in this trust, a subtle power that grew with each repetition. It was private, hidden, and yet profoundly important. He didn't need others to witness it. He only needed himself. There were moments when he almost gave up. Nights when fatigue and doubt pressed him down. Moments when it felt easier to stop and join the others in casual distraction. But even in those moments, he found something to hold on to, a memory of a small success, a fleeting feeling of mastery, or the simple joy of movement. That small spark kept him going. Even when the rest of the world seemed indifferent, no one around him understood the effort it took. They saw the surface, the casual movements, the calm expression, and assumed it was effortless. They could not see the hours spent practicing in solitude, the tiny adjustments, the meticulous repetition. They did not know about the discipline required to stay focused when no one was watching, patience to try again and again without complaint, and that was exactly how he wanted it. The quiet struggle, the private victories, they were his. He did not seek validation. He did not crave recognition. The satisfaction came from within, from knowing that he was building something meaningful in a way that mattered only to him. There was power in that privacy, a freedom that allowed him to grow without interference. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the small changes became noticeable, but only if someone paid close attention. The subtle control, the steady precision, the smoothness that developed slowly over time, these were the hidden marks of effort too easily overlooked by casual observers. He was shaping something beyond the eye of the untrained viewer. Crafting a skill that could not be faked or rushed, he often imagined the moment when people would finally see what he had built. It was not a distant dream, but a quiet expectation held with patience. He did not need it to happen immediately, and he did not dwell on it constantly. Still, it existed as a possibility, a faint glimmer that guided him in his long hours of practice. It reminded him that the effort, however unseen, was not in vain. Even during ordinary days, there was a sense of progress. Every repetition, every attempt, every small correction added up. He could feel it, subtle as it was. It was not loud, it did not announce itself, but it existed. That feeling kept him engaged, kept him focused, kept him moving forward. Sometimes curiosity crept in. What if someone did notice? What if they were surprised? Would it change anything? He allowed himself a quiet smile at the thought. Perhaps not. Either way, it did not matter. The journey itself was enough. Through all of this, he learned about patience in ways most people never do. Not the casual patience of waiting for something to happen, but the deep, steady patience of building skill without immediate reward. He understood that progress was rarely visible, that growth was often invisible, that value was not always recognized by those around him. That understanding became a quiet strength, guiding him through every small challenge. He also learned about humility. Not the humility of self-doubt, but the humility of knowing that true mastery is not loud. True skill does not demand attention. It exists quietly, steadily, and persistently. He carried this humility like a shield, protecting his focus from distraction, protecting his effort from the noise of the outside world. Sometimes he felt the isolation. There were moments when the quiet hours felt long, the work seemed endless, and when the lack of recognition stung faintly. But he never let it define him. He reminded himself that isolation was temporary, that effort was never wasted, and that the real reward lay in the work itself. That perspective kept him steady. In the rare moments when someone did pause and watch, he noticed. A brief glance, a slight curiosity, quiet acknowledgement. These were fleeting and unpredictable, but they did not control him. They did not shape his motivation. His drive came from within, from the silent hours and the small victories that no one else could see. That was enough. By the end of each long day, he felt a quiet satisfaction. Not the satisfaction of being recognized, but the satisfaction of knowing he had continued, refined, and persisted. He felt the subtle rhythm of progress, the faint pulse of mastery, the hidden joy of work done well. It was private, personal, and profoundly important. No one around him realized the depth of his commitment. They continued to see him as casual, playful, and unimportant. They laughed, whispered, or ignored. Yet all the while, he grew stronger, sharper, and more capable. The difference between appearance and reality became a hidden advantage, a secret that only time would reveal. He had built a foundation in silence, in patience, and in quiet determination. Each day layered skill upon skill, effort upon effort, shaping something solid beneath the surface. It was invisible to most, but it existed, ready to emerge when the moment demanded. And so, he continued. Each day, each repetition, each small adjustment, all in the quiet hours that no one else noticed. Each day, moving closer to a moment when all of this hidden work would finally be understood. He did not rush it. He did not announce it. He simply continued steadily, silently, with a calm that masked the fire beneath. The fire that would one day surprise everyone. It started as a casual day, no different from any other. The space was filled with the usual sounds, footsteps echoing, quiet conversations, the faint hum of daily activity. People moved through their routines, barely noticing him. He was there, as always, calm, focused, seemingly absorbed in nothing more than simple fun. That was exactly what everyone expected. Some friends laughed and joked nearby, thinking this would be another ordinary moment. They leaned back in their chairs, sipping drinks, or chatting casually. Some glanced over at him, smiling faintly, and then returned to their own conversations. No one had any reason to believe anything unusual would happen. Nothing about the scene suggested surprise or intensity. He, however, felt a different kind of anticipation. Not a loud or anxious anticipation, but a quiet awareness that something could change. Something might happen that day that would shift everything, even if no one else noticed. He had learned to sense these moments over time. Those rare occasions when preparation met opportunity, when focus could turn the ordinary into something extraordinary as he moved. His hands and eyes followed patterns that were familiar only to him. Every movement had meaning, every gesture had intention. To the casual observer, it seemed effortless, like a playful exercise or idle pastime. The rhythm was smooth, steady, almost hypnotic in its simplicity. Yet beneath that calm surface, years of hidden practice were at work, each motion informed by countless repetitions, each pause calculated and precise. People nearby made comments in passing, light and casual. "Looks easy. Anyone could do that. Why spend so much time?" They meant no harm, only speaking what they thought. He nodded politely, never arguing, never defending himself. The comments rolled off him as they had done so many times before. But inside, they reminded him why he had spent so long preparing in silence. The underestimation, the laughter, the ignorance it was fuel, subtle and powerful. Shaping his focus without distracting him. As the day moved on, a small shift occurred. Someone asked him to show something for fun, as a casual request, not expecting much. The question was simple, innocent, almost teasing. He smiled quietly and agreed, his mind already aligning with what he would do. For everyone else, this was just another casual moment, a bit of entertainment. For him, it was an opportunity. A chance to show the depth of what had been quietly developing for years. He positioned himself, ready in the space that now felt slightly different. People gathered casually, some out of curiosity, some out of habit. Conversations slowed as the eyes of a few drifted toward him. Laughter faded slightly, replaced by a faint sense of anticipation they did not yet understand. They expected a brief performance, something light and playful. They had no idea how wrong they were. The first motion he made was small, almost unnoticeable. A simple gesture, meant to begin without drawing attention. The room remained calm. The casual observers leaned back, ready to dismiss it quickly. But as the movements continued, something subtle began to shift. The rhythm, the precision, the smoothness, There was an underlying skill that had not been apparent before. The patterns started to flow in ways that seemed effortless, yet carefully controlled. People blinked, unsure at first. What they saw did not match their expectations. They had thought it would be casual, playful, simple fun. What they were witnessing was focused, disciplined, and far beyond what they had imagined. Some leaned forward, curiosity replacing their amusement. Some whispered to each other a question in their tone, as if unsure whether to believe their eyes. He did not notice them. He did not need to. His attention was fully absorbed in the flow, in the movements, in the quiet mastery that had been years in the making. Each motion, each step, each pause was deliberate, guided by an inner sense of timing and control. The casual moment they had anticipated transformed, slowly, into something captivating. The ordinary became extraordinary without fanfare or announcement. The room grew quieter. Laughter stopped entirely. Conversations ceased. Even those who had not been paying attention found themselves drawn in. Eyes followed the subtle shifts, the unexpected precision, the beauty hidden in motions they had always assumed were simple. Shock, disbelief, and admiration began to mix in the air, though no one spoke it aloud yet. The contrast between expectation and reality created a tension that filled the room more than any words could. He felt the subtle change in energy, not from the audience, but from himself. There was a heightened awareness, a flow that only occurred when preparation and opportunity aligned. Years of silent work, repeated endlessly in solitude, had prepared him for this moment. And now, the hidden skill, the quiet mastery, could be seen even, if only by those willing to look closely. Some observers tried to hide their amazement. Others could not. Faces shifted from casual amusement to open surprise. Eyes widened. A few whispered, unable to contain themselves, while others simply stared, trying to process what they were seeing. The playful, fun image they had carried in their minds collapsed, replaced by something far more serious, far more impressive. He continued without hesitation, unaware of the growing attention. Each motion remained calm, steady, and deliberate. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was showy. The beauty of the moment came from the skill itself, the quiet precision, the subtle power that had been invisible for so long. Each observer felt it differently. Some saw art, others saw control, some saw an effortless mastery that seemed impossible. But all felt the shift. The sudden recognition that what they had dismissed as fun was anything but. A few people moved closer. Unable to resist the pull of curiosity, their earlier laughter and light comments had vanished entirely. They were now fully engaged, trying to understand, trying to follow each motion, trying to keep up with the unexpected depth unfolding before them. The tension in the room was almost tangible. It's a mixture of disbelief and admiration that seemed to fill every corner. He reached the point where the flow became complete. The motions, the rhythm, the precision, they all aligned perfectly. A quiet satisfaction came, subtle but profound. He had done what he had practiced in silence countless times. The unseen effort, the hours of repetition, the private struggle, it was all visible now, though still understated. The observers were left stunned, unsure how to respond immediately. The transformation of perception was sudden. People who had thought it was casual fun, meaningless and simple, now realized the truth. The skill, the dedication, the quiet mastery, it had been there all along. They had simply been unaware, distracted by appearances and assumptions. Now, those assumptions shattered, leaving them in awe. He finally paused. The movement stopped, but the tension remained. The room was still. Eyes met his briefly, and in that brief moment, he saw the change, the shock, the respect, the admiration that had replaced indifference. He did not smile broadly or announce victory. He simply remained calm, steady, and present, letting the moment speak for itself. For the first time, some people understood. Not fully, perhaps, but enough to know they had underestimated him. The casual fun they had assumed, the playful gestures they had ignored, all carried depth, skill, and years of hidden work. and they realized that the quiet person they had overlooked was far more capable than they had imagined, even after the moment passed. The memory lingered. Conversations started again, but with a different tone. Laughter returned, softer, more respectful, tinged with disbelief. People spoke quietly among themselves, trying to process what they had just seen. The casual day had turned into something memorable, something that no one would forget quickly. He remained as calm as ever, his expression unchanged. But inside he knew that something subtle had shifted. The gap between expectation and reality had been revealed. The hidden work, the private discipline, the silent hours of preparation, they were no longer invisible. The room had witnessed what he had been building all along, and though few fully understood, they could no longer dismiss it as simple fun. He returned to his usual quiet demeanor after a while, blending into the background again. But something had changed in the air. People glanced at him differently, with a faint mixture of respect, curiosity, and lingering surprise. They had glimpsed something rare, something that had been carefully nurtured and finally revealed. That day marked a turning point. Not a loud announcement, not a celebration, but a subtle shift in perception. The casual moment had become extraordinary. The hidden skill had emerged. And for the first time, many realized that the quiet, unassuming person they had overlooked was capable of much more than anyone had expected. The moment passed, but the impact would remain, quietly echoing in the minds of those who had seen it unfold. As he continued, the atmosphere in the room shifted entirely. The casual amusement that had filled the space before was gone. Every eye was now fixed on him, every movement he made observed carefully. People had started to realize that this was not simple fun. They had underestimated the depth and skill that had been quietly growing for years. The laughter and whispers disappeared completely, replaced by a tense silence. A mixture of awe and disbelief. His focus remained unbroken. He did not glance up at the audience, did not seek their approval, and did not allow the sudden attention to sway him. The flow he had been practicing for so long continued seamlessly. Every motion was deliberate, precise, and smooth. What had seemed casual before was now clearly the result of disciplined effort. A level of skill few could achieve, and even fewer could understand. People began to lean forward instinctively, drawn by the unexpected intensity. Those who had laughed at his casual demeanor now realized that they had been entirely wrong. The skill they thought playful was serious, sophisticated, and impressive. Some whispered to their neighbors, trying to process what they were seeing. Others simply remained silent, eyes wide, hearts racing, unable to fully comprehend the level of control and precision in front of them. The transformation was not just external. The quiet private hours of practice, the patience, and the repeated effort all came together in a way that no one could ignore. It was as if the room itself had changed, the energy charged with recognition, surprise, and an unspoken respect. Every subtle gesture, every carefully executed step carried a weight that had been invisible before. Now, it was impossible to overlook. He did not feel the pressure that many might in this situation. The attention did not disrupt him, did not cause anxiety. Instead, it reinforced what he already knew, that preparation, patience, and dedication build a strength that is calm, steady, and enduring. His confidence was quiet, a quiet certainty born from years of private effort. This was not arrogance. It was mastery hidden beneath the surface until the right moment. Some people instinctively tried to imitate, to understand, to catch up with the complexity they suddenly realized existed. Their attempts were clumsy, awkward, and highlighted just how far behind they were. They could see the skill, they could even follow the pattern superficially. But the subtle mastery behind it remained just out of reach. The realization brought a mix of admiration, frustration, and humility. They'd assumed it was easy, simple fun. But now they understood how wrong they had been. He continued, steady and unshakable, letting his actions speak louder than words. The room was fully engaged, every observer absorbing what they could, yet all aware that much of the mastery was hidden in subtleties. The elegance of the movements, the balance between speed and control. The rhythm that was neither rushed nor slow, these were the hallmarks of someone who had poured countless hours into perfecting their craft. It was the kind of skill, that could not be faked, could not be learned overnight, and demanded respect by its very nature. The tension in the room was palpable. People had expected a brief display of casual fun. Instead, they witnessed a demonstration of dedication and talent that few could match. The contrast between expectation and reality created an emotional intensity that made every second feel longer, more profound. It was impossible not to feel the shift, possible not to acknowledge that something extraordinary was unfolding as he reached the peak of his demonstration. The subtlety of his mastery became even more evident. Every movement, every transition, every pause had purpose. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was accidental. The fluidity of the performance left the observers captivated, their earlier casualness replaced by full attention and quiet amazement. The gap between what they had expected and what they were witnessing could not have been greater. Some who had doubted him, for could not hide their astonishment. Faces changed, expressions shifting from disbelief to admiration. There was a shared, unspoken understanding. They had judged too quickly, underestimated too easily, and now they were confronted with the truth. The playful act they had dismissed as meaningless revealed itself as serious, disciplined, and breathtaking. The room hummed with silent awe, the energy almost tangible. For him, there was no rush to finish, no desire to impress with flair or showmanship. He allowed the moment to unfold naturally, letting the skill speak for itself. The mastery had been cultivated in silence, and now, without need for words, it was acknowledged. Each observer absorbed it in their own way, some in admiration, some in disbelief, some quietly calculating how much they had overlooked. It was a revelation that could not be unseen. Time seemed to stretch. Every observer was caught between surprise and respect, curiosity and awe. The casual world they had assumed, the light-hearted perspective they had brought, was gone. They could no longer view him as someone simply passing the time. The quiet, patient person they had ignored had revealed a capability far beyond their expectations, and it was impossible to dismiss. When he finally allowed the flow to settle, when the subtle crescendo came to a natural pause, the room remained silent for a heartbeat longer than anyone expected. The impact of the performance lingered, filling the space with unspoken acknowledgement. The casual fun had been transformed, the underestimated skill revealed, and the observers could only absorb the reality before them. There was no immediate applause, no loud reaction, only quiet, stunned recognition that what they had witnessed was exceptional. The realization sank in gradually. People began to look at him differently, their assumptions shattered. The playful, underestimated figure had revealed the depth of preparation, discipline, and mastery that had always existed but remained unseen. That moment, quiet and profound, changed the perception entirely. No one could return to thinking of him as casual, playful, or simple again. They had been proven wrong, and the proof was undeniable. Even after the immediate tension began to ease, the change lingered. Conversations started again, but they were quieter, more reflective. People exchanged glances, subtle nods, and whispered acknowledgments. The room had shifted in a way that could not be reversed. The surprise had left an impression that would stay, a silent respect that would not fade quickly. They now understood, even if only partially, that he was someone who had quietly built skill, patience, and mastery over time. He returned to his calm demeanor, blending into the background once more. The extraordinary had unfolded, yet he remained steady, unchanged, as if it were all ordinary to him. But the observers had changed. They had seen what they had never expected, and the moment would remain in their memory. The quiet person who had been underestimated had revealed something far greater than anyone anticipated that day. The lesson was clear without words. Appearances can be deceiving. Casual demeanor can hide intense preparation. Underestimation can be shattered in an instant. And true skill, nurtured quietly and patiently, speaks for itself when the right moment arrives. The audience had been transformed, and though he remained calm, the impact of what had happened was undeniable. The casual fun they had expected had been replaced by quiet astonishment, and the respect for what he had built in silence would linger long after the moment had passed. After the astonishing display, the room remained quiet for a few moments longer, each person processing what they had just witnessed. There was a mixture of disbelief, awe, and respect, all tangled together. People shifted in their seats, their earlier casual attitudes replaced by a newfound seriousness. What they had thought was simple fun had revealed itself as the product of years of dedication, patience, and quiet practice. The realization was powerful and humbling. He remained calm, serene, almost as if nothing extraordinary had happened. To him, it was simply the result of effort, focus, and countless hours of preparation. The satisfaction did not come from the recognition, or from the awe he had inspired, but from the knowledge that he had performed with precision and mastery. That inner contentment was deeper and more lasting than any applause or praise could ever provide. People began to react. Slowly at first. Some whispered to each other, incredulous that they had misjudged him. Others tried to find the words to express the admiration they felt, but struggled to do so. They were experiencing the same quiet shock that comes from realizing you have underestimated someone who quietly carried immense skill and discipline. A few nodded to themselves, acknowledging in silence what they had failed to see before. He noticed the change in the room, though he did not let it distract him. Every glance, every expression, every faint murmur of acknowledgement confirmed what he had already known. It was not about proving them wrong or gaining their approval. It was about the power of preparation, persistence, and quiet work. That was what truly mattered. And it had finally been revealed in a way that spoke for itself. Some people approached him afterward, hesitant and respectful. They asked questions, tried to understand the depth of what they had witnessed, and admitted that they had been wrong in their assumptions. There was a mixture of humility and curiosity in their voices, a desire to know how someone who appeared so calm and ordinary could achieve such mastery. He answered simply, without boast or exaggeration, sharing just enough to hint at the years of quiet effort without diminishing the sense of wonder. The impact of that day extended beyond the room. Those who had witnessed it carried the memory with them, sharing it quietly with others, recounting the calm presence that concealed extraordinary skill. What had seemed casual and unimportant became a story of patience, perseverance, and hidden talent. The lesson was clear. Appearances can deceive. Quiet dedication often holds the most profound results. He returned to his routine afterward, blending once again into the background. Life continued, with its familiar sounds, distractions, and movements. Yet now, there was a subtle difference. People no longer overlooked him completely. There was a new sense of acknowledgement, quiet and respectful, a recognition that he had earned without needing to demand it. It was the kind of respect that arises from seeing, understanding, and finally appreciating the depth of skill and effort. The change in perception did not alter him. He continued to practice, refine, and grow, finding satisfaction in the work itself. The knowledge that others had been surprised or impressed was secondary, almost incidental. His true focus remained on the process, the effort, the private discipline that had always been the foundation of his skill. That was the source of his confidence, the reason he could perform so calmly and effectively. Over time, the memory of that day became part of a larger understanding among those who had witnessed it. They learned to look beyond appearances, to consider that skill and dedication are often hidden beneath calm and ordinary exteriors. The story of his quiet preparation and surprising demonstration became an example, a reminder that persistence and focus can produce results far beyond what casual observation suggests. It was an enduring lesson, silently shared, quietly appreciated. He, meanwhile, continued to move forward with the same quiet determination that had always defined him. Each day brought new opportunities to practice, to refine, and to explore the limits of his abilities. The recognition of others was not the goal, but it served as a subtle confirmation that the work mattered, that the effort had meaning beyond the self. Yet he remained humble, aware that mastery is never complete, that there is always room to grow, and that the quiet journey of improvement is its own reward. Occasionally, he reflected on the moments before the demonstration. When people had laughed or underestimated him, he did not feel resentment, only a gentle understanding of human nature. People often see only what they expect to see, and assumptions are powerful. The experience reinforced his patience and his appreciation for the quiet, steady process that had prepared him for the moment when all of it would be revealed. He also considered the fleeting attention, the whispers of admiration, and the stunned expressions that followed. He knew that most observers would never fully understand the years of practice, the silent effort, and the private discipline that had made the display possible. But that did not matter. What mattered was that the effort was real, tangible, and effective. That was the enduring truth, beyond perception, beyond recognition, and beyond expectation. As time went on, he became even more committed to the process that had brought him this far. The calm, quiet dedication that had defined his journey became even more ingrained, a natural rhythm in his life. The surprise and admiration of others were fleeting, but the satisfaction of mastery, the quiet joy of effort, and the enduring confidence of preparation remained constant. These were the foundations that allowed him to continue growing, learning, and excelling without needing external validation. The day he surprised everyone served as a reminder that perception is often limited, and that hidden effort and unseen skill can change everything in an instant. The lesson extended beyond that single moment, influencing the way people thought about talent, discipline, and the value of quiet work. They learned that underestimation is a common mistake, that appearances are often misleading, and that those who prepare silently can achieve extraordinary results. He never sought to repeat the surprise. The demonstration was not a performance to impress, but an outcome of years of consistent effort. His satisfaction came from knowing that the work was genuine, that the skill was real, and that the moment of revelation, when it came, was authentic and unforced. That authenticity gave him a deeper sense of achievement than any applause or recognition ever could. In the end, he understood that life is a mixture of quiet preparation, fleeting opportunity, and unpredictable recognition. The skill he had built in silence had finally met the right moment, creating an impact that lingered far beyond the initial surprise. The lesson for those who witnessed it, and perhaps for those who would hear about it later, was simple yet profound. Never underestimate quiet effort. Never judge by appearances, and respect the power of persistence. He continued his journey, steady, calm, and focused. The respect of others was appreciated but not required. The true reward was the ongoing mastery, the private satisfaction of improvement, and the knowledge that years of effort could produce something extraordinary when the time was right. That was the culmination of everything he had built, and it remained a quiet, enduring force guiding him forward, far beyond the astonishment of that single, unforgettable day.